And I restart. All right.
Okay,
Go.
so first I should introduce myself. I think everybody knows me, but I'm Diane Ward and I'm the vice president because the president couldn't make it tonight. And the first thing I want to do is welcome Matt to
Thank
our
you.
first official meeting, and we're really glad to have you join us.
Thank you very much.
And don't be afraid to ask questions. No one has asked as many as I have.
All right.
Yeah. Should we do introductions for everybody?
So, sure,
Or-
I think. that'd be
Yeah.
good.
Why don't you go ahead and
Matt Kramer. Val Eisel, board member and treasurer.
thank you. Tina Karsten's administrator. Pam, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, I'm Pam Skinner, board member.
Erin
Erin Anderson-Wenz, I'm with Bar Engineering Company.
and Tracy.
Tracy Gallowitz, I'm the attorney for the district.
Nicole.
Hi, Nicole Soderholm, district staff. I'm the permit coordinator.
Paige.
Hi, Paige Alberg, district staff.
Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Provost, and I'm with water quality at the district.
Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Donay. I'm district staff in natural resources.
And Dave.
Dave Lawson, district staff.
Okay, so the next item is really the first one. We need to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda. Move to second.
Okay, any discussion?
No discussion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we need to do our oath of office, Tracy.
Oh, good. I was going to do that during my report, so I won't have a report today, but I know you each saw it in your packet. And what I might just do, I've got it up on my screen, so I'm actually not seeing you, but I think we could, I can notarize or swear to this, but if you would feel comfortable raising your right hand. And as a board member, do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that you will faithfully, justly, and impartially discharge the duties of the office of manager of the Ramsey-Washington Watershed District, Ramsey and Washington Counties, Minnesota, to the best of your judgment and ability?
I do.
I do.
Great. And, as a reminder on some of those, we need to take care of the whole of the district and make sure that we are doing what's in the best interest of all. So I just think it's a really good time to remember that as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Okay, we have a consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Oh. Your turn. So moved. Seconded.
Any discussion?
I had a couple of questions. I was curious on the prior permit 0437 for project number 2216. There was it said it was approved. I didn't know when. I guess I couldn't remember when, or I didn't write it down in my notes. What was
Yeah,
that?
this would have been before you were on the board. I noted the permit number 0437 and 04 signifies 2004.
Okay.
So it's quite a bit older common plan of development. And we had asked, this was during different rules and design criteria as well. So we had asked for some additional calculations from the applicant to ensure that with Atlas 14 rainfall and our current requirements, that they weren't going to be causing any adverse downstream impacts from their development. So they did submit those extra calculations to demonstrate that.
Well, I was curious. And do you know, Nicole, where's the best way to search those, or can you show me offline maybe?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to do that on the website. We have a database that tracks. I guess you could look at the interactive map, but it kind of depends on what information you're looking for. So I can certainly assist you in whatever you need. We have kind of an electronic archive. And we also have an access database that is able to be edited and reviewed. And that's where I enter new permits and track financials and things like that. And then our interactive map on the website, I believe, has spatial information on where permits are located. But yeah, we can certainly chat offline if there's something specific you're looking for.
No, it's as only being on the board still for a year, I still learn. So I was trying to like, oh, that was an interesting comment. I just was kind of curious about it. So probably for my own personal interest.
Yeah, with some of these common plans of development, it was long before my time as well. So it's helpful to have some of that information archived from previous permits to be able to refer to. I certainly wasn't around in '04, so that comes up fairly often when they're referencing previous treatment provided, like pond systems and things like that.
Cool.
Do you have any more?
May I ask? Oh, if you have
No,
some,
go ahead.
we can trade them. I was curious on the grants for 2214. Was that individual also participating in the restore the lakefront area? Do we know? And
Yeah, she is not at this point. She's on the no, I'm blanking on the site. She's not in the area we're going forward with this year. Yeah, so this will be separate from that, and I have mentioned it to her, but we haven't yet selected our next phase. So I hope she'll be interested when we do.
I mean, it looked really nice. I was just curious.
Yeah, she seems really on board with anything natural she can do.
Then the only comment I had, Nicole, was if we have an old permit like that, if you could include maybe at least the summary page in our packet. We don't need to see all the old maps. We can hit you up for that if we decide we want it, but it would be nice to have that little bit of background.
Sure, yeah, I think most permits have a cover sheet similar to the format that you're used to seeing. We have some really old permits that don't have that information, but I can try to pick through what may be of interest if that comes up again.
Yeah, or even sticking in just a paragraph in the new summary, just something to give us a little background. Be helpful, thanks. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? I have a motion. Oh, we had it. Let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We don't have any visitors, is that right?
We do not.
Okay. Permit program, back to you, Nicole.
Yeah, so we went through the applications already in the consent agenda. So I have the enforcement report, which for board member Kramer's benefit, this is a monthly report that appears in the board packet. It may list any construction site violations that have occurred in the previous month. Summarizes our meetings attended, both for myself and our inspector, Mary. And then some routine kind of project updates for permits that have already been approved that are ongoing and being inspected. Also list any permit closures and if there are any residential permits approved by staff. Some single lot residential permits are able to be approved without board action, provided they're not requesting a variance. And those typically are shoreline projects that might trigger our floodplain rule. So they tend to be a lot smaller in scale and simpler. So we opted not to have homeowners wait a full month sometimes to get board approval if it's a pretty straightforward application. So if there were any residential permits approved by staff, I would list those here as well. None this past month, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on the project updates or meetings that you guys may have.
And when did we make that change? Was that a couple years ago now? For
Yeah, I'd have to look back at the exact dates, but you know, it went through a year plus of like as a pilot, and then
I think we approved it.
gosh, you'd think I'd remember.
About a year and a
I think
half.
it was last summer that the board approved sort of a more permanent implementation with the understanding that there may be changes to it in the future that would come back to the board. But so it's a relatively new process. There's a different web page just for residential permits with frequently asked questions. There's decreased fees associated with a residential permit compared to like a larger commercial development. So yeah, I think it's been going well. We haven't really, I've gotten one this past week. So I anticipate now, with the ice out that we might see some more applications come in, but yeah, generally really slow in the winter months for those.
And this is part of, I think, kind of a continuing effort on the part of staff and the board to make the services more accessible, a little easier to get to, combined with the website changes. And this was nice, like Nicole said, then they don't have to wait for that month to get the permit approved. And we did it as a pilot for a year first, and now we've had it going. So. Okay, is there any other discussion on permits?
I had just a question on the EAW discussion with the city of Woodbury. Could you say a little bit more
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, it was really introductory, very brief. I don't know if you're familiar with the Bailey Nursery site in Woodbury. It's a very large landscaping plant site for the Bailey Nursery, and they're looking at redeveloping that. I think they're moving some operations out of state. So we heard that there would be an EAW environmental review happening with that site. And so we wanted just to be in the loop, but we didn't really, it's so early that we didn't really glean any information about the uses. It's probably going to be a mixed use. I don't recall how many acres it is, but it's partially in South Washington watershed as well. And we did do a wetland delineation last year, I believe it was. So I've been to the site and approved the wetland delineations, but other than that, I don't have any information at this time. But I think it was good to connect with the city because they, know we want to be involved early on and see if there's any, first of all, if there's any regulatory roadblocks that we need to be thinking about with their plans, but also to see if there's any innovative stormwater that could be implemented on the site. So it's a little too early. I think we thought they were further along when we requested the meeting, but I don't know if Paige or Tina, if you remember anything else.
I think if I remember right, they didn't think they'd even be doing the EAW until 2023. So then that would mean it'd be 2024 beyond before any development were.
I didn't realize that they were going to do one, so I just figured I'd ask.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything else? Okay, I think we're ready. Thank you, Nicole, to move on to.
Yeah, thanks.
And stewardship grant.
Yes, so we're at the budget status update, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, so for Matt, again, for Matt's benefit, this is just my monthly update for what funds are allocated. So I have each project type, and I don't want to get into too much detail in the program, but we can definitely talk more if you have questions. But so homeowner projects and then larger projects that are more commercial, school, other government agencies, that level of funding, the different types in there, the funding amount, and then number of projects that are awarded for those, and then funding, and everything that is requesting over $5,000 comes to the board for approval. Anything under is approved at the staff level. So those are on there. The projects that have been approved tonight are marked with an asterisk, as well as Lake Owasso, which is coming up next, I believe. That restoration project is on here as well. And then kind of estimate of consultant fees spent so far. And then our maintenance grant as well is on here, so I can keep track of how much funds I have to allocate for projects the remaining year.
And we've used up 2/3 of the budgeted money, which actually is good. Sometimes some's left on the table, and we really like that. And we have options if we need to move some more money into that line.
I've just been impressed on how many more it's been.
Yeah. Well, and bigger ones.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Some of these bigger ones are really nice too. And
Yeah.
talking about doing the Wasso for years, so it's nice to see that all coming together about the same time the park restoration is happening, so possible tour spot
Yep, for
this
sure.
year or next, maybe.
Mhm.
Do you have anything else to add, Paige?
Nope, that's it.
Any questions or comments? No? Thank you. Then we're down to action items.
Yeah, actually, I probably have Paige continue to talk about the Lake Owasso shoreline
Yeah,
bids.
Yes, we were excited to get those 4 bids in. 2 of them were a little higher than we would have wanted to see, but we were happy with the low bid, Land Bridge Ecological. They were the contractor for the Twin Lake Restoration Project, and we've been really happy with their work. They do a lot of other grant projects, so we work closely with them and are excited to have them on board. They're excited for this project as well. They're really easy to work with. I think they work well with the homeowners as well when needed. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I can answer those.
And just for the record, the estimate of probable cost for this project was 169,112, and the low bid was 158,497, essentially.
and the other 3 were higher than the
Yeah.
estimate.
Do we do discussion now?
You might as
You
well.
can, yeah.
So it just surprised me that 3 of them came in, 2 of them like so significantly higher. I don't understand that. Have we worked with them in the past or?
We have, yes. Those 2, it's hard to say. They had really high mobilization costs, their maintenance. So this project includes 2 years of maintenance. Their maintenance costs were a lot higher. Some contractors, they don't actually need the work, so they just bid really high. And then if they get it, they're in that much more money, I guess. But yeah, we've worked with both RES. They did the Snail Lake project and have been great. And then Davy Resource Group was formerly Outdoor Lab. So we've done a number of projects with them as well. Yeah.
With that just large jump, it just signaled me to ask a little.
Mhm.
So I figured I'd ask.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot more experience with these maintenance pieces of the bids now that we've been making sure that that's included.
Mhm.
So that's helpful. So are we ready for a motion?
Yes, I will move that the board accepts the bids and awards the Lake Owasso Shoreline Restoration Project to Land Bridge Ecological Inc. and direct staff to prepare and mail the notice of award, prepare the agreements, and review the required steps.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Motion carries. And then the next one, who's presenting that?
Paige will do that one too, I think, right?
I think, yeah, between me and Aaron, I don't have much to add on this. Bar did some good background and reference checking of shoreline landscaping. They were the low bid for this, and again, came under the engineer estimate, which is good to see. The district has never worked with shoreline landscaping. I've worked with them on a few cost share projects. Sounds like they're really excited about this one. They're capable. We talked to a couple other soil and water districts, and then I think one other watershed district that have worked with them and had nothing but good things to say about them. Yeah, can answer any questions, I guess.
Yeah, I was reading the content after, and it was the first time I had seen kind of, is this what the process occurred because we hadn't worked with shoreline landscape before? The report from Aaron and Barr.
The memo, yeah.
Yeah, the memo. Could you just help me understand that? Is that documented due diligence that occurred when you guys reviewed shoreline landscaping?
So typically, if we haven't, like if the folks that work with the watershed district from BARS and haven't worked with a certain contractor, or if the watershed hasn't worked with a certain contractor, we do call references and ask for project examples. That's pretty typical. If we know the contractor, we don't typically do that. And so in this instance, we did do that. And actually in the past, we haven't always provided a formal memo like you saw later, but we as with a lot of the process related things, we've been trying to be a little bit more formal in how we present the documentation. So that's why you see that there and haven't seen that before. This was a new thing we were trying. And so at the time that that memo went into the board packet, we were still checking on references. And that's why we put that little caveat in there that we're still checking on references, but if everything checks out, we would recommend, we would call them the responsible bidder and recommend moving forward. So does that answer your question?
It definitely does. Can I ask a follow-up question, Erin?
Mm-hmm.
On the next steps, when you go through and review the submittals and if necessary request modifications, that's standard protocol, what you wrote as next steps, right?
Yeah.
Unique because of the newness here. I just wanted to check.
No, all of the reviewing of submittals, that we do that with every single project. That is standard practice. So yeah.
I just wanted to interject for, Matt and Val, we don't always accept the low bidder. What we say is a responsible low bidder. We have had some experience with contractors where they have done a poor job and we have warned them that we aren't going to consider you responsible, even if you're the low bidder. So I just really like when BAR does that if it's somebody we don't have experience with.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, it saves questions in the meeting because then if it's somebody we haven't worked with before, we're always saying, well, how do you know, who have you talked to, blah, blah, blah. So I like this format. I'd like to see it every time.
Great. Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I would second that, Erin. I really like the format. I was looking at the bids too, and it looks a bit more normally distributed, which didn't give me pause.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and there's still a spread. I mean, that happens for the very same reasons that Paige just explained.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? I think we're ready for a motion.
So I will move to accept the bids and award the 2022 targeted retrofit projects to Shoreline Landscaping and direct staff to prepare and mail the notice of award and prepare the agreements and review the required submittals.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, Tracy, you're up. Attorney report.
Sorry about that. My internet is really unstable. I don't know why. I don't have anything to report. You can see from our bill this month, we attended meetings, but we really weren't called on. So all good news.
All right, well, thanks. And then we move on to the board issues. And the first one was the administrator performance review. So I just wanted to document for this meeting a record that the board did meet in closed session on April 20th at 6:30, and we met here in person and I had a good discussion and made our decisions. And Tina was in the building, so she came in and met with us for a bit of discussion afterwards. And I will be meeting with her monthly, which is kind of a change in procedure. And we're going to move up the schedule to something more timely, like end of the year, beginning of next year, for next year. So I think we've done everything, the letter documenting that we had the review, and the result has already been put in the personnel file. So then we go on to the CAC meeting. Did you go?
I did go.
Do you have anything to add?
I didn't against the meetings that were documented. I will say I had to leave a little early for personal reasons, but no, they were a very passionate group. Tina did a really good job presenting on kind of the plans and the maps. They seemed really engaged that way and interested in seeing how that matures. But no, I nothing to add of value over and above what was.
Yeah, I appreciated getting all the information, and we're kind of tag teaming covering those meetings for this year. Okay, then we are at board action law. Anything on that? I guess I would just say I don't think you need to wait for the board members' input team in a number of things, and we can maybe just start including that as part of the pack, and it'll get gradually added to.
Sure.
Are there ways that we can help or clarify through the meeting to suggest when an action is there, or?
I mean, I think I can pull it out, but I think if there's something, you know, at the end, when we kind of do a summary of next, if there's things that you want to make sure I add, or even throughout the meeting.
Okay.
If you're like, that's a good item for our action log, then definitely point that out at the time. But
Okay.
otherwise,
Yeah,
I will
We
pull
had
that
talked
together.
about like maybe there's a keyword we can say, or can we put this on an action log? So
Mhm.
maybe the stenographer can assist with it, or the transcript process can assist.
Mhm. Sure.
Okay.
I can look back at my notes too, and I'll see if I have
Yeah,
anything
anything that we want to make sure it's on there. Yep.
specific. Yeah,
And on fraud education, we're gonna be covering that next
Next month.
month.
Yep.
And on the wetlands policy piece, that's coming up.
Mhm.
this
would
month.
that merit another workshop, or is that going to be in the board? I didn't recall.
For the wetlands policy, yeah, there'll be another workshop, but so the scope summary, I think, lays out a point in time come towards the end of summer and early fall, where I think that will make the most sense.
And since we're talking or mentioning the scope summary, Larry and I were wondering if we can move up that first piece just a month, since it's all about definitions. That's
Yeah, I can talk with
something
Aaron about
people
that.
can probably just do pretty easily.
Okay. Yep, we'll figure that out.
Okay. And then West Bend is like follow-up thoughts.
Should we talk about it now, or should we talk about it
Either
during
one.
the reports?
Either one. Why don't we go ahead and do it now, and Tina, you can add if you've got any updates.
I do have an update, actually. So the city of Venice Heights had a council workshop last night that they discussed, and I found out about it today. So I was not invited to attend, but they had a discussion. They had the letter that I have included in the packet that was signed with Larry's signature from the board. They had all that information. I talked to the city engineer this morning, and he said that it was a very good discussion with the council, and that they were very positive about the steps moving forward. And he thought that that would be something they would be interested in us pursuing. So I think that will be, in the end, their recommendation. I think they want me to come in at a further meeting, so I will plan to do that, and I'll talk with Jessica Carroll, the engineer, about that.
Just to make sure that I caught the note
Yep.
correctly, you said Venice Heights City Council had a working
Yep.
session?
Yep. So because the VLAMO is a JPA, so they're a joint powers organization, so it's their member cities make up their board and make up their organization. That's actually VLAMO's funding comes a little bit different. They have a utility, but typically they also would get money from the cities as well to do projects. So it's a little bit different structure. So VLAMO felt very strongly that Venice, and it's actually in the law that the city, that the boundary change have to concur as well. So that was, VLAMO wanted Venice Heights to weigh in and make sure that they were supportive before moving forward as well.
Is there a process where they elevate this to the, it's not the comptrollers, is that correct? The board that nominates the watershed board? Who are the individuals? There's 7 of them.
The commissioner.
Yeah, county commissioners, thank you. I'm just-
No, it would come
I was
through
missing
us,
the
and then
statement.
there's a procedure.
Right, so a boundary change for watershed districts happens through statute. And we would be responsible for, along with VLAMO and the city, and then that would go to the Board of Water and Soil Resources for approval.
Yeah, I couldn't,
So
I
that's
didn't know
the-
which direction it ended up going. I just wanted
Yeah.
to ask.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, just let me see. I do have a long paragraph that I wrote. Now I gotta put myself in that mindset. No other questions. So the positive, when you said it went positively, they were willing to entertain it, or they said, oh, this makes some sense?
They said it makes sense, and that he said they didn't take any votes or, really take any action, but he said that the direction of the conversation was positive.
Okay.
I'm guessing that workshop the video will be posted so that you can watch it too, if you want to see the discussion they had. I certainly will as soon as it's available. They did have, he said they might have a few more questions around, I guess they were more curious as to why we, because they saw those costs that would be incurred, especially for water quality improvements. And so they were a little curious about, well, why would you want to do that if you're going to incur those costs? And he said he answered the question, but they might want to hear from me as well. So I think that was really, he said, the only question they had. But, and I did talk to Phil Fiore, the administrator at Blamo today as well. And he said that his board president will likely be calling a subcommittee meeting. So the people that came to our board meeting and would want me to come for that meeting as well. So, and I will certainly let the board know. So if anyone wants to attend that.
Well, and I don't know, I can't speak for Larry, but he might want to go too.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, because I think later on in the packet we had talked, or one of the things discussed was, does it make sense for a board and board just interaction type of meeting? I think it's always nice to have that interaction anyway.
Well, I thought I would add a little context for Matt and even Val, who was around them, but not on the board, and Pam may want to weigh in. That July 19th date where we talked about working with them, that was when things with Twin Lake were blowing up because the water had got in there and was threatening a home and had compromised the water quality. And what we talked about doing a joint management plan so that the costs would be shared. And that was kind of the context of it. And asked staff to work on that. And since then, as you saw, we did a lot of work, like $664,000 worth, but none of it was shared. So that's kind of where we came back to. And so I'm a little leery of the working together, and also for the reasons that.
Yeah, I think actually, can I clarify that July of 2019, the direction that was given to staff was to not pursue a boundary change and to continue to work together. And we have on water quality issues, the water quantity, it was my understanding that that was our responsibility and not Blamo's to contribute to the flood risk.
And I remember that we weren't ready to do that because we were initially as a board going to talk with them, and then it was delegated to staff to start the discussion. So it wasn't a decision not to do a boundary change. It was, let's start working together and see where it goes. I also was curious, you said that they thought that West Bannis had historical significance
in 2019.
Yeah. Do you know what that means?
Well, it's in their name. I think, like, so Venice Lake was one lake at one point in time. It's part of their watershed, as it's in their name. It's part of their history. I think that was the thing. It's like, here we have one water body who is split, and now we know is not significantly connected. But I think that was just their feeling at the time. And that was, relayed to me from their previous administrator and their previous board as well.
Yeah, and Tracy, I appreciated your comments at the beginning, because I think we need to always keep in mind what the legislative intent was in creating the watershed districts and the purposes. And I think we've been working from the belief that it would further the purposes to have all of our watershed flow within our watershed. So that was a good context for that. I wanted to ask you, Tina, if you knew why it didn't go to the April 2nd meeting. Was it because they were going to do some work with the cities first?
22nd, their April 22nd.
Yeah.
I think they wanted the city to weigh in first.
And you implied, I had to go remember what was written down below, but it's around 6 months to complete. There probably is some more back and forth from this
Once you
point.
start the
Once you
process.
start
Once you really start redrawing the lines and
Right.
going through the review and comment periods, and then Bowser has a process for them to complete as well.
Did they ever say or communicate intent with some of those other parcels? I know that one of the board members who attended virtually mentioned them a couple of times. Did you hear that in the workshop at all?
What do you mean
The
by the?
land parcels for, what is it, 40 something land parcels that they
Yeah,
had, or-
so I had done my own, I think they had just thrown out that there were a certain number of
Yeah, I
parcels
couldn't
that
remember. It
were
was like-
impacted, so I had in my memo, and I don't have that up now.
I know,
but
I had to
The
go back and find it.
numbers,
But they didn't mention that being, or at least as something to investigate.
so
further.
actually the city, Jesse did say that that was one question that they wanted to understand, just the impact on their residents. But that's something we can easily provide to them as far as economic. I mean, so the change would be is that they would now be paying
Yeah, the-
property
levy.
taxes to us through our levy. Whereas now they don't pay that to Valamo, it comes out through the city budget. Although yes, they have a utility, so they do have a utility fee. I forget that they have different
Yeah, they
structure for their funding. but-
And so then, so their next steps after the workshop will be to bring it back to Valamo board, and they'll talk, right?
So the Valamo subcommittee
With
is gonna
subcommittee.
meet, and then they'll make a recommendation to their board.
Okay,
So just looking at their schedule and ours, it was looking like it won't come back to us until maybe our August meeting.
Maybe,
yeah,
yeah,
that's kind of what I was
maybe
thinking.
July if we, because they have a meeting at the end of June. I don't know the packet date,
Okay.
if I could get it in the packet, but it is something I could bring verbally to you
Yeah.
in July as well, but as an update, but as far as moving forward, it probably would be August.
Any other comments or questions? Then I think we should have a motion to accept these work plans and these scope summaries, with the exception of moving the wetland definitions.
Are we talking about the next item? So hey, Erin actually has a presentation.
Oh, yeah, on the,
Yeah.
on the Metro
Yeah.
Mississippi River. Sorry. and
Well, yeah, she was just gonna
Westward.
walk through the 2022
Excellent,
engineering
'cause I had
projects. Yeah,
some questions about that.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
yeah. So she's
Okay,
gonna do
yeah.
a quick overview of the projects, and she's gonna focus specifically, walk through these scope summaries as well.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Erin, you're on.
Okay, and I will keep the walking through all the projects brief, but I guess I would ask you, as you see what I've pulled together, to think about what kind of feedback you might have for us in how best to organize this information. So you've seen, Val, I don't know if you've seen one of these walkthroughs before. Diane, I know you've seen a couple.
I saw it at the CAC meeting, what I
Val,
watched.
yeah, and even from then, we've tweaked it a little bit. We were trying to figure out the most functional way to organize the information. So it's shifted a little bit since you saw it, Val. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And Tina, I did send you a link to this story map in case this goes south. Always good to have a backup plan with technology. So I'm gonna get this going here. So we do so many projects for the watershed district that we like to leverage a technology called story maps. It's a GIS-based way to organize information. So let's see. Let me know. Okay, I just shared it. Do you see the story map, Tina? You know what it looks like.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so we do a lot of different kinds of engineering projects for the watershed, and it's important that we find the most efficient ways to update you all on what those projects are, where they are, and what's going on. So some of the ways that we keep you updated are the monthly status reports and what we call our project status report that goes into the board packet each month. We also track on these scope summaries, and you saw what 4 or 5 of them this month, where we kick off a project and tell you what we propose for the scope, the schedule, and the budget. And then also once a year, we try to walk you through all of them in this format on this story map. And so I'm going to do an abbreviated walkthrough here and show you how this is laid out and get a little feedback. So we like to make these maps that show where all the projects are. So this is the whole watershed district here. And these are all the different kinds of engineering projects that we're engaged in. And the markers on the map show where the project is and what kind of project it is. So down here in the legend, you can see project type. So there are CIP repair and maintenance projects, there are capital improvement projects, feasibility studies, project operations, research projects. And then there's district-wide work that encompasses a lot of different aspects, but that are really looking at the district as a whole. And so there's a list of things here. So we have this static map where you can see the call outs of where the projects are and what they are. But I wanted to just highlight some of these in this new format, this way that we've organized things on this story map. So first of all, let me just back up. So we've got an interactive map here, and we're going to zoom into a few different things. So first I wanted to just talk briefly about lake level monitoring stations. And so I've zoomed us in here to the Spoon Lake area. There's actually several different places that we're monitoring lake levels, as you know. The Spoon Lake gauge is one of many that we're looking at and tracking in real time. And then on the district's website, we have charts of what those lake levels look like. So this is the Spoon Lake gauge shown from last January all the way through present time. So if you go on the district's website and go to a lake that has one of these gauges, you can see this data being updated. The other type of project we're doing a lot of right now is flood risk reduction studies. And last month there were some scope summaries presented. This month there were some scope summaries presented. There's about 5 or 6 different efforts going on. And so the one I've highlighted here is the Coleman Creek Wakefield Lake Diversion, where we're looking at taking water from Coleman Creek, which would start right here through the North St. Paul Urban Ecology Center, and actually looking at moving it through Goodrich Golf Course, where we could potentially do some water quality treatment projects or a water reuse system, and then letting it go down into the Wakefield Lake watershed. And that's a project that I think you saw the scope summary on last month or the month before. Oops, sorry about that. And what I have included here for reference, if it will load, is a reminder of all the different studies we're doing this year and what the flow is between this year, next year, and beyond. And these are some excerpts from the flood risk reduction technical memos that we presented last year to remind you where these efforts are going on and what the goals are. If I pop out to aeration studies, I've got Markham Pond shown here. There's also an aeration study going on in Bennett Lake. And in this study, we're doing a lot of monitoring of dissolved oxygen and temperature levels across Markham Pond. And formerly we were working in Frog Pond near Bennett Lake to establish a baseline for what the dissolved oxygen levels would be in these water bodies before and after relief targeted aeration. So that's some research going on that Keith Pilgrim and Bill Bartoget, district staff, are working on together. Another kind of research project going on right now is a spent lime application in a pond that's south of Wakefield Lake. One thing you'll notice here as I'm clicking around these maps, we have pulled in the purpose of the project. This is the same text that you see in the project status reports to remind whoever's looking at this story map why we're doing the project in the first place. So just sort of a brief summary of what the goal of the project is. This project, if you remember, is a partnered project with the University of Minnesota, leveraging funds from the Stormwater Impact Fund, and it's partnered between BAR and the Watershed District, where we've sprayed spent lime slurry into the pond to see how that might change the internal loading characteristics of phosphorus in this pond south of Wakefield Lake. So this is during the application here, they're spraying the spent lime in, and this is a sediment core taken after the application. You can see the spent lime right there. And then these get tested in a lab to see how that application may have impacted the internal load in the pond. So that's ongoing this year. Target retrofit, these are being closed out this year, but we are still under warranty for the plants. So you'll still see some reporting on these projects. I have a photo here. This is the target in North St. Paul. And I've got a photo of one of the rain gardens as it looked last fall. So we'll be coming out to inspect these plants and making sure that they survive the winter. And if not, that they get replaced before we close out those projects completely. So a little bit of work left to do on those target retrofit projects. Keller Weir project. This is part of the adjustable weirs that were installed both downstream of Keller Lake and at the Phelan Lake outlets. If you remember, this is, oh, that's the wrong photo. There we go. This is the Keller Weir right here. So these are those moving gates that we can play with now to help reduce flood risk in the Phelan chain. CIP maintenance is something that we do all over the district, but I have highlighted a couple of different projects here in the Battle Creek watershed. This is the Battle Creek Interceptor, the storm sewer that gets inspected every 5 years. This is actually a shot taken from the bottom of the storm sewer looking up at one of the overflow structures in Battle Creek. So part of the CIP maintenance program is inspecting these large stormwater tunnels to make sure that they are in good shape, and where they're starting to crack or erode, that they get fixed so that they can continue to function into the future. And these are just some other photos of the types of CIP maintenance work that gets done around the watershed district. This is near Tanner's Lake. This is a permeable weir installment that's been in place for decades now and needs frequent maintenance because of all the vegetation that grows in this wetland area. And this is one of the more recent ones. This is that daycare property where there were some broken storm sewer sections and a lot of erosion, just really close to where you're sitting at the district office right now on Jarvis Creek. So one of the scope summaries that's in the packet is about evaluating compliance with the South Metro Mississippi River TSS Tmdl. So this is something that we haven't had to report on in the past, but we will have to start reporting on it next year. And the way that Tmdl is written looks at the aerial loading of sediment per acre in areas that are tributary to the Mississippi River. So this is, you can think of this as the Lake Pepin Tmdl. Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District wasn't involved in the development of this Tmdl. It's a huge number of stakeholders. And so we haven't really talked about this one very much, but it's starting to get to the point where we need to start reporting on whether or not we're in compliance. And right now, we don't even know if we're in compliance. We've never really assessed that. So one of the efforts this year in the scope summary, it's laid out how we're going to go about assessing whether or not we're in compliance or not. And if we're not in compliance, where we're not in compliance and what might be done about it. Now, fortunately, the things that a watershed district would do to reduce the amount of TSS running off of their watershed look very similar to the things a watershed district would do to limit the amount of phosphorus coming off their watershed. So there are a lot of projects that have been put in place already since the Tmdl was written that the watershed district will get credit for in their reporting. And we have a lot of tools to assess whether we're in compliance, and if not, where we're out of compliance. And I did include a photo here. This is the Beltline's outfall into the Mississippi River. And in fact, it's not the whole district that we need to do this assessment for. It's the areas tributary to the Beltline, because the only reason that the watershed district is considered an MS4 that has to report on compliance for this Tmdl is because you own the Beltline storm sewer. So it's because of this outfall that we need to see if we're in compliance or not.
Hey, Erin.
Yeah.
TSS is sediment, just, yeah.
Total, yeah, thank you. Total suspended sediment. So, yeah, and I can walk through the scope summary, or can, you know, I'm assuming that you've read it. Do you have questions? Or Diane, it sounded like you had a question.
No.
I think Val might have one. Yep.
Yeah, I was curious. You, in your discussion, you had mentioned that we could take credit for some of the work that we're already doing for TSS. And just to help clarify and for me to connect the dots, it's really any work that we've done as it pertains to the Beltline or things going to the Beltline.
Yeah, in areas tributary to the Beltline. But what we'll need to be doing, and this is described in the scope summary, is really we're going to have to look at monitoring data at that outfall to see what the total suspended solids load has been, and back that out over the tributary area to see, are we exceeding that threshold of pounds per acre or not? And if we are exceeding it, where should we be targeting projects, and what kind of timeline should that look like? And what is the plan? Which is something that, you know, the staff and managers would need to discuss what's the right fit for Ramsey-Washington.
So where do you do your measurements? Just at the outlet or all the
Yep.
way?
Yep, right at there are a series of, let's see, what does WAMP stand for? Watershed Outlet Monitoring Program. Yeah, where there are monitoring stations at these major outfalls to our major rivers. And so we can look at the data that's collected from, and it has been collected for years. So we can look at that data and make a good assessment of what's coming off of Ramsey-Washington through the Beltline.
And then if it's above the threshold that was set in the Tmdl, then we would need to look at what we would do to get it below that threshold.
Yeah, and that's where we could leverage our models. We have P8 models. That's not necessarily something we've talked about a whole lot, I think, with this board in terms of the water quality models that we have of the entire watershed district. But just like we have extensive hydrologic and hydraulic models, we also have pretty detailed water quality models as well that we can leverage. So we don't need to build from scratch. We can leverage the tools that we already have.
I can see why we need to do this. It's required, but isn't this more of an issue where there's agricultural runoff? And I mean, you're talking about the Beltline. I did have my little tour in there with Pam and others, and
yeah,
it's not full of sediment. So,
right.
So is this kind of just a pro forma thing, or?
Well, I mean, it certainly will feel that way if we're clearly in compliance, because, and it could be, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of the area tributary to the Beltline are lakes, ponds, wetlands, and lakes. And so there's a lot of sediment that comes out in those water bodies, frankly. So by the time it gets to the upstream end of the Beltline, the vast majority of the water has gone through a series of opportunities for settling. So it may be, if we're not in compliance, it may be that we need to focus in the areas that are directly tributary to the Beltline. And that's actually something we have looked at in the past. It's been quite a number of years, because what tends to happen is that impaired water bodies, impaired lakes tend to get more attention because they're more, they were being, people had to report on them already. This one is one that's been lurking around for a while. We just haven't had to start reporting. So that's why you're seeing this now.
I had a question, Erin. So you had mentioned in the discussion, if we were out of compliance, what would that look like? Could you just paint a picture if we realize that we're out of compliance? So you said we might need to prioritize, I get that, but I don't actually know what other work. Oh, and Pam raised her hand for later, but
yeah.
Yeah, could you just paint a picture really quickly on what kind of things we'd be looking at doing?
Sure. So it's not all that different from the situation. Well, it's a little bit different. So think about the lakes that are impaired in Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District. So Wakefield Lake, Bennett Lake, Fish Creek, Battle Creek, those water bodies are on the state's impaired waters list for various things. None of them are, well, that's not true. Battle Creek is listed as impaired for sediment, but Wakefield Lake and Bennett are listed for excess nutrients. Fish Creek is listed for E. coli. And so we have a number of impairments for chloride. And so there is work that we as your engineering firm and that your staff do to try to figure out what can be done to fix that problem, because those water bodies have had Tmdl reports written that say, here's where the problem is coming from. And by the way, in some of those cases, we have written those reports for the Pollution Control Agency, we meaning the Watershed District. So we know where the problems are coming from, and that gives us ideas on what can be done. And so we do things like targeted retrofits, and we do things like giving priority for cost share to projects that would be in an impaired watershed, for example. The difference here is that in those watersheds, so Wakefield, Bennett, Fish Creek, Battle Creek, Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District isn't technically the MS4 who is on the hook for implementation. So the watershed district in those watersheds has said, we'll take the lead. You all decided, we'll take the lead on implementation. We'll help the cities track what's being done in their, in their cities. will help report that to the Pollution Control Agency, but we as the watershed district have this bird's eye view that crosses city lines. So we're going to take the lead, even though technically we don't have to. So the difference here is, okay, this is another water body. It's the Mississippi River. It's an impairment for total suspended solids. The way the Tmdl is written is a little bit different because it's this pounds per acre, which is not like the other ones that are in your watershed. The other difference is you are on the hook for reporting because you own the Beltline storm sewer. And frankly, we're still working through exactly what that means, if it overlaps with other cities and how all that gets teased out. So we're in communications with the Pollution Control Agency. And frankly, they're still trying to figure out some of those things as well. But in the meantime, it seems prudent to leverage the monitoring data that we have, leverage the tools that we have to figure out how far off are we anyway? You know, are we fine? Maybe we're fine. Are we way off? I don't think this means we're going to hastily rush to do anything, but we're trying to get our hands around where we're at to start. Does that make sense?
Yes, or no, that's, you answered my second question. So
Oh, good. Pam, you had a question.
Yeah, Pam.
Yeah, thanks. A comment and a question. So just to add on, and first, Aaron, thank you for that presentation. It was very informative and very well done. And I really liked all the pictures and the deep dive into things beyond what we get in our board packet normally. But I'll just comment one that, you know, when you're talking about reducing the total suspended solids in the Beltline Interceptor, I think of all the things we've done over the watershed districts for years, like working on Keller Lake, Phelan Lake, Ames Lake, Wakefield Lake, all the things, some of the things you've talked about all serve to reduce TSS that enters that Beltline, and I imagine that will impact that. And then just on a wild tangent here, thinking about, you know, you showed a picture of some, you know, exposed pipe going down a hill that needs to be dealt with. And it reminds me that I have a puppy who some of you may have seen early on in the meeting today. I'm going to the dog park in Battle Creek, and the watershed district, one of its first projects it ever did a whole lot of work in Battle Creek Park. And as I'm walking through the park now, I notice all these old corrugated metal structures that are sticking up here and there, and they look old and kind of decrepit. And I'm just wondering if we as a watershed, if one, might those be structures that our watershed district installed? And two, if they are, is there some process in place whereby we, like who's in charge of maintaining them? And if it's us, are we looking at those? That's my question.
I would say most of those, especially if you're in the dog park in particular, those would be for local drainage that were probably put in by the county parks to handle the local flows. Anything that would be our responsibility is inspected yearly and maintained. You'll often see them in our 2022, especially like McKnight Basin. And some of there's some pretty significant flood control projects that were done in the park that we certainly are maintaining and inspecting, but a lot of the smaller, or the pipes that you're mentioning, I would guess are local drainage infrastructure.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions on the South Metro Mississippi River TSS Tmdl compliance project? Okay, I'll keep us moving. I just have a few more. Just wanted to share a photo of the Keller Parkway project. So that's up here. You're familiar with that one, replacing the culverts that go underneath Keller Parkway to help with that conveyance. We have a photo here of what those culverts look like, real squat and wide ones so that they can fit under the roadway. So now I'm going to walk you through a few more where we have the other scope summaries in the board packet. And so let me know if you want to discuss those more. The Ames Lake Technical Assistance and Project Planning. This project should look familiar to you because it started last year. We just moved it on through this year because we realized there was a lot of talking we needed to do with the city of St. Paul. And we've now had 2 meetings with them, and that continues. That area is a particularly low point in the watershed, not just Ames Lake itself, but this low area here that's surrounded by Mechanic Avenue. There's homes that are anywhere from 2 to 4 sometimes even higher, where their low entries are that, sorry, let me restructure that sentence. There's homes whose low entries are anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 feet below the 100-year flood level predicted by our models in this area. So we've started communications with the city of St. Paul, as I think you've heard in the last couple of months. So I did include the scope summary here because I didn't think you'd seen the updated version. Are there any questions on this scope summary?
I had a general piece here, and I think your engineers have been doing this, so I just wanted to reiterate. I really like when you guys do the 25 and 50 and the 10-year as you guys the board.
Yep.
So I know it says 100-year floodplain. I think that's exactly what we have to shoot for, but it really does help digest the information with those other levels. So I'd assume I'm making an assumption that that would also come out with the report out.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there are maps that have already been made of those inundation footprints that have been shared with the city. And we have, we've been updating the other story map that relates to all the flood risk reduction projects in particular to reflect, what structures are affected when. So yeah, definitely that is something that is layered in here. And actually, that is something maybe we should make more explicit in the scope summary. That is definitely happening, but you're right. I don't think that we said that explicitly in here. So.
I'm fine with, writing down every single detail that you guys go through isn't exactly what I'm searching for. As long as that's kind of just now the standard practice, I'm very happy. Yep. And did you want me, I had another general question, Aaron. I could hold it to the end, or I could just ask it now.
I'd say go right ahead.
I had a question on the, so I seem to recall a couple of months ago, or maybe it was 3 months ago, when you kind of came back, or the team came forward and said, this is the plan of attack. These are the 3 that we're doing. And it was very helpful. I recall there being an introductory discussion with some of the cities, some of the did that happen, and how did it go?
Yeah, so that happened for the next 2, well, it happened for the Ames Lake area. So we had that introductory meeting with the new contact at the city that we are to work through. And then there was a meeting yesterday, right? Tina, you were there.
So
with
with the internal team at St. Paul. So it was a representative from each department, as well as their new water resource coordinator. So
yeah,
which sure they're getting everybody involved.
Yeah, and so the meetings so far with St. Paul in particular have been very much about background and bringing them up to speed at all the work that's been done, and then in particular the concerns about the Ames Lake area. So there's been a lot of rather heavy lifting to just get them information and bring them up to speed, especially since they have some new staff. We had a long history with Wes Saunders Pierce there, and he recently took a different job. So there's a new person there that we're getting to know. So that's been going well. It's just that one's a little slower out of the gates because of the nature of the flood issues, but also because of just the newness of the staff. The next, go ahead.
It was just, so it's really, in summary, just to make sure it clicked, right now the goal is to inform, no actions required. You didn't hear anything worrisome, and there wasn't any pushback in the information. Okay.
No, I don't think, no pushback, but I also feel like maybe a little bit of just, they're trying to soak it in. I don't, Tina, what would you say?
Yeah, for St. Paul, definitely soak it in.
For St. Paul, yeah.
To they move a little slower anyway, so then to have new staff, and it's because it's such a complicated structure for their city, and then also for the projects. But I would say, if you're going to update on the city of Maplewood, I mean, that was a different story.
Yeah, so that one is relevant for this County Ditch 17 improvements. That's another scope summary that was in the board packet this month, as well as the Phelan Village flood risk reduction project. Also, the scope summary was in the memo, or the packet. And that one, they look quite similar because it's the same approach with the same city, just a different location. And so we met with Steve Love to talk about that, as well as the diversions project. And that was a little more like off to the races. So no, promises of anything, but Steve got us their CIP plan, so we know where all of their road construction projects are happening so that we can plan ahead and coordinate that with the city. So that was really helpful. He's gotten us more storm sewer information that we were missing before. And so I think the next steps there is also to meet with a bigger group of people from Maplewood and move these projects forward. These are smaller and frankly, to some degree simpler, although the County Ditch 17 project, that would be quite a project. That's a deep ditch that has a storm sewer underneath it with lots of flood risk around it. So Tina, I don't know if you want to comment on anything else there, but that was a little more like, okay, let's get going and share information and put some information down on paper.
Yeah, there was some good synergy too, because there is some overlap on work that the city is going to be doing in these areas.
Yeah.
So that was encouraging too. We knew
Yeah.
that. Felt like we could definitely take the next steps on those.
Yeah. Any other questions on the Maplewood scope summary? So County Ditch 17 or Phelan Village flood risk reduction. They always say you're supposed to wait 7 seconds and it just seems so long.
Oh yeah, I guess you're sharing your screen. You can't see us shake our heads.
No.
I can see you, but you're tiny. So, okay.
It just looks like a dot moving.
Yeah, I know, like, I don't know. The other projects I have here are ones that are really district-wide, and I have a couple of example graphics to remind you what these are. So the project prioritization tool is something that we're leveraging pretty regularly as new potential water quality projects come into play. And you've seen that before with the targeted retrofit projects. It's how we assess which watershed or which water quality project we should potentially do next. So you'll hear us talk about that tool. And this is just a screenshot of how we assessed the Mounds Park Academy and the St. Pascal Baylon Church projects that actually now are going to be going to construction. So just a reminder of what that is. And the inspections tool, I think you've learned about that in past meetings. This is just a screenshot of what the tool looks like and the types of information that can be input out in the field with a mobile app as BAR and district staff do inspections and assess what maintenance activities should have priority. And then lastly, I just have the scope summary for the watershed management plan wetlands update. But before I open that one up for discussion, is this kind of summary helpful? And is it something that you would find yourself wanting to refer back to later as reminders of where projects are? I know sometimes with the project status reports, there's so much and it can be hard to remember what's what. Is this something that you would appreciate having available through a link so that you could come back and visit it? Or is this like, no, just run me through it once a year and then I don't want to see it again?
I like it, and I actually talked with Larry about this too. We'd like to see it and we'd like it in the same format. This is useful.
Okay. Yeah,
I agree. I agree. Totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah, we could include the link in the PSR.
Yeah, that's a good
We sure could.
Yeah.
We sure could.
And then use it to update.
Sure.
Mhm.
And this wouldn't, per se, would this substitute in for some of the other mechanisms that have been discussed, like a Gantt chart or some sort of table?
No, Erin, do you have an example?
I have it.
Okay.
I have it right here. So this is the other thing I wondered about is if this is something helpful. So now let me get my bearings here and stop sharing this. I do have an example. So this is a Gantt chart or an example of how we could be tracking in more of a spreadsheet Gantt chart format. Sorry, give me a moment here.
And this could be included in that story map as a link.
It could be, yep. Okay, so.
I was thinking the same thing in that if you had what you just put together as a PDF that you presented to us and then included a Gantt chart as part of that for each project, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So do you see the spreadsheet?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what Brandon pulled together. This is only the flood risk reduction projects, of which there are 6 going on, or I guess 5 going on here. And so what you see here are, this is with everything collapsed. So this is sort of the highest level you could look at. So for each of these projects, he's assessed what % complete we think we are, whether the budget is on track, whether the schedule is on track, if there's any status comments. Now, this one, I think, you know, we wouldn't want to go too crazy on this because you're getting more information in the project status report anyway. So this would just be like super highlight, I think. But then a reflection over here of the overall schedule for each study in blue, tasks that have started and upcoming milestones. And you would only see those if you expanded these. So this is the Owasso Basin Area North Star Estates Improvements Project, which I think we put the scope summary in a couple months ago. And these are all the tasks that are laid out in that scope summary. The % complete we feel we are for each of those tasks, and kind of what's going on at a very high level on each of those tasks that have started in orange. So you can see we've started these 3 tasks. And then these are the significant milestones that we laid out in the scope summary. So you'll be able to see if we're on track or not. It's another more graphical way to see how we're doing, because if you see, oh, and I guess, yeah, the red bar is what month we're at here. So if the red bar is starting to get past us and we're not complete, then you'll hear from us why. We'll have some answering to do. So you can see here, you can expand all of them. Some of these projects have many more steps than others, and so on.
Aaron, I really like the high level view where it was compressed. It really helps put into perspective where things are at. And I think the elements communicated is effectively what I was hoping to see. And I think, you know, not to speak widely, but I think we had discussed wanting to see it. Yeah, I like it. And I totally agree with Pam, and keeping it in the link makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
If it can open to the tasks, so, you know, since that's how it was laid out for us. And the other thing that's helpful about having it all in one place is if there's new stuff that comes up, we may need to shift priorities a little bit, and then you can just really look at it. And well, maybe this could wait till next year. Or so let's move this thing up.
Yeah, and that's something that BAR and district staff have always done, because we prepare those scope summaries and we track on there. But I recognize that that's not something that the board, I mean, the feedback that we got was that the managers aren't necessarily seeing that. So you see the scope summaries at the beginning and then you never see them again. So, you know, I think this could be a good way to keep it, keep that information available.
I do like it. If it does get overburdensome, it would be good to receive that feedback too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. I suspect that most of it, you know, we're, like I said, we're already tracking this. We're just tracking it in a little different way. So I think we'll just have to try it on over the next few months. And if there's some process improvement that we can see, we'll certainly bring that up. Tina, was that your vision as well? You didn't see this before the meeting, so I'm kind of springing this.
Yeah, I've seen this. It's changed a little bit, tweaked from some comments that I gave Brandon, but yeah, I think it looks good. We said we would start with the flood risk feasibility studies, and then if this is working for us, we can add in some of the other engineering projects as well, so that you can see that. And you'll see underneath in the gray there is the future studies, the things that you've shared, you've heard about, but they're in the future. So those are there just to keep track of. And I talked with Brandon too about a project list, because as we complete feasibility studies, we have a number of projects that we've identified as potential, and just keeping track of those and then seeing how they move up into those top boxes as we move forward with them. So
go ahead.
Really helpful for talking to residents and cities, and just county commissioners, just documenting what we've done. It's really helpful. Just a good working tool. But I agree with Val. We don't want form over substance if this ends up being a lot of paperwork, then we piggyback on another tool, but just
Sure.
having some kind of comprehensive tool will be really useful, and I think save time in the long run.
I do-
Diane, I totally second that, Diane. I think it is. And I was thinking too, like our plan, this would be a nice summary to have in our watershed district plan that we put together, whatever, every 8 years. And something, a tool to be on our website that board members or residents could click through and get more information by starting here and then leading, it's an easy to understand starting spot. And it summarizes things really nicely. So I really like it. And I agree with Val, if it's going to be too cumbersome, let us know.
Yeah, we'll try it on. I mean, I like, we like spreadsheets. We really, really do. So yeah, so does Val. So I did see that. You're still tiny, but I saw you cheer. So yeah, I think we should try it on, and we'll just see how it goes. So I guess what I could envision doing is adding maybe some more of the projects onto the story map, because they're not all there. They don't all have, well, all the projects are there. They show up in the map, but I don't necessarily have representative photos or graphics for everyone. I'll see if there's any that are kind of begging for it. I don't want to overdo that either, but then maybe another link on that story map is the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll talk through how to
yeah,
kind of combine all that into one.
yeah.
Why don't we
Yeah.
try it on for a walk a little bit, and then we'll see how to
Yeah.
change.
I think we could consider it kind of a work in progress for a little while before we get kind of a new norm down.
And if I were to just say, take a pause and say thank you for listening, I really appreciate the almost instantaneous response here. This is awesome, because I could see this and the utility for the public and for us really clearly.
Good. Well, it's good. It's good. There's so much going on, and we know that, and we're really proud of it. So to help you wrap your heads around all of it and share that with the public is our mission too. So good stuff. Any other general comments about that? Otherwise, I'll ask if there's feedback on the wetland watershed management plan wetlands update scope summary. That's the last one of the ones that were included.
I think we're good with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll stop sharing. I forgot you're still looking at the spreadsheet. I'll pull up the wetland scope summary. Any comments on that?
No, this one seemed fairly straightforward.
Yeah, just the one I said earlier that I wondered if we could move task one to June.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Especially since we're just defining the current terms that are in there.
Yeah. I think from our end, we could too.
Yeah, it's just kind of our stuff, so.
Okay.
What do you mean by?
Well, I mean, it's the watershed policies and the rules. And
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good.
definitions. And
Yeah.
things.
Okay.
I don't have any more comments.
All right. I think we're good on that one too. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, then I do think we should have a motion to accept these work plans on the new scope summaries.
Is that in a particular form, or is it? So moved.
So moved, yeah.
Seconded.
All right. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great.
I think we're to you.
Yes. So I have meetings attended and upcoming meetings. It was a busy month of April.
Yeah.
A lot going on. So if there's any questions about any of those, I'm happy to answer, but otherwise, and upcoming meetings, Waterfest is right around the corner, a month from today, actually. And there's future board meetings as well as CAC meetings and Metro Mod meetings as well. There's no questions about that. I can move on. We talked about the action log and audit and wetland policies. I think we're all good on those. The right track intern. I don't know if Paige's, I should put Paige's name behind this. She wrote up this update for you all. But this is an intern that we'll be bringing on this summer through a program called Right Track. And, oh, there's Paige. Do you want to just overview that?
Yeah, so yes, exactly what Tina said. Young adults, interns serving through, it's a program through the city of St. Paul. They started a number of years ago, and we applied to be a host site for one of these interns. So to be someone with a kind of environmental, natural resource background, or interest, I shouldn't say background, they just have an interest. A lot of them don't have any experience. So this program helps them get real life work experience. They can do it multiple times. A lot of them choose, I was part of the interviews, and a lot of them had been past interns who had great experiences, but were looking for opportunities at another place if possible, just to gain that experience. But we'll have them helping with permit BMP inspections. So keeping up with those, I'm helping Nicole and Mary with those inspections, and then making sure they get out with natural resources and water quality, and hopefully help states with some education stuff as well. So they get a wide variety of experience.
Are they high school or college or both?
You know, they kind of range. So ours, we need them to have a driver's license, you know, plus we're not really on a convenient bus route, so they have to be able to get here. So ours will be anywhere from 16 to, I think it goes up to 23 or 24. So just kind of depends who they, Right Track places everyone. We don't have any say in that. So I'll find out.
Frame?
They start the end of June, kind of mid to end of June. I don't have a set date yet, but well, you have a supervisor training the end of May, and then they'll place interns shortly after that, and then they start mid to end of June, and then they can continue on. It's a 8-week program, but the person can continue on if they're able to with their schedule.
Paige, is that the only time frame then? Is it during those 8 weeks, or is there like another session that happens in the fall?
Yeah, that's the main one. There's something else, and I need to look into that a little bit more, but we were able to help, I don't know what the word is. We had one of the Ramsey County Right Track interns shadow us, and they had a shorter, like a 5-week program over the fall. So that was something different, but I will look into that too. I think that's for existing host sites can do some, like a shorter term one as well.
I think it's great that we're doing that and participating in it, and it fits with the outreach that we've been trying to increase. So thank you for doing that. And I'll be really interested in hearing at the end of the summer how it went, kind of from both ends.
Yeah, we'll probably ask if they would attend one of the board meetings too, so you can meet them, and then they can get that experience too from a board's perspective. So. Great, thanks, Paige.
I had 2 things pop up into my head. I apologize.
That's okay.
One of them is related to the upcoming meetings. We had discussed kind of in a discussion point, one of the boards, if there might be a benefit to doing another board tour. Maybe that might be something. I don't know if it's a good time during the summer because it can get kind of humid walking around, but you know, maybe that's something we could talk about later.
Yeah, typically we would shoot for like September so that it's a, it's a
I
nice
saw it
time
go
of
through
year.
August, so I was like, ooh, man.
It's also a good time because some of our summer projects are wrapping up into the fall so that you can see some of the completion, but I think it'd be great to do one this year.
And one of the things we were doing before COVID was if we had a project that maybe Aaron was going to present on or something, those who were available, we'd go to the site
Before the meeting.
board meeting.
Yeah.
I'm
I
a
would
very
love that.
visual learner, so
Yeah.
that always really helped me understand, you know, in addition to looking at maps and reading the reports, just having Aaron or staff go, see over here.
Yeah.
Was very helpful.
Yeah, we should plan something for June to do that. So we'll talk about that.
There's something that it fits well with, but just remember you gonna haul those big kind of map or diagrams, and we stood on the sidewalk and looked at them, but it put everything into context.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. We can plan that for sure. Yes.
The second point is we had the individual at the CAC speak to outreach for younger individuals within the watershed district. That might be, as you brought up, you know, the outreach with the YJ2 track, maybe there's a benefit to hearing that out later. And I apologize, I should have waited to the board actions to finish that. But I thought this just made me remember, oh, addressing younger generations, getting them involved. might be
Yeah,
interesting.
so that's from our communications intern, Jasmine, when she presented to the CAC a campaign, a social media campaign that she's putting together.
Some canoe trips or
Yeah,
canoe
it was
paddles.
can't remember the word she uses, like a,
It was a well done presentation.
Like
I
a-
can't remember it.
what do you call it, like where you do like a, not a scavenger hunt, but like a check the box, you know, like a checklist of things to do in our watershed that
It's a
It was a
really good
passport.
idea.
wasn't it?
Pass- like a
That's something like a
passport,
passport.
Yeah, it's a really
Yeah.
good
I just-
idea.
Engaging the younger generation, I think is going to be important.
Mhm.
And I like this outreach as one, but that one just came to
Yeah.
mind.
And I did invite Jasmine to come to a meeting, and so maybe she can come next month and present on that as well.
That'd be cool.
Good. Otherwise, we talked about the West Badness Lake boundary change, unless there's anything else on that. That is all I have for my report today. Great.
So on project and program status reports, usually we just call on the managers if they have any questions about the updates or comments about them. And Val, we could start with you.
Yeah, I was curious. It came up, I think, in the natural resources area around the dead fish impact. I'm not familiar with how that impacts the water body, but does that impact the water quality? It wasn't really clear to me. I'd assume not, but I just wanted to ask.
No, it's more about the, like we said, the dissolved oxygen levels and how it impacts the
Oh,
fish.
forgive me.
community,
I
but-
mean the dead fish within the water because
Oh.
they sink to the bottom. I was kind of curious.
I don't know that we've ever evaluated, and we don't necessarily see a spike or change
Yeah,
in
that's-
water quality because of that. I don't believe. I don't know, Aaron or Matt, if you have anything to add to that, but no.
Just that there, I think for the level of fish we saw, there wouldn't be any noticeable change.
Okay. Yeah, it just made me curious.
Yeah.
I can pass. See if I want to ask.
Okay, well, then I will ask about item G, which was the Owasso Basin North Star Estates. Are there updated maps? It sounded like there were.
Aaron, do you have updated maps for the?
And if there are, can we see them?
So what we've been doing, and I'm trying to figure out which page are you on?
See them, are they,
So this is, let's see, here we are. So on the PDF, it's page 122.
Okay, yep, I'm there. Oh yeah, okay, so this was because we updated some maps because we had done some survey of the area. So we had some updated kind of targeted topographic information because the city had gone in and surveyed within the manufactured home park. So we wanted to compare that to the inundation, to look at how that might change the inundation footprint and whether that changed the number of manufactured homes that might be deemed at risk. So we can certainly share those. I don't have those with me right now, but that was one of the things we wanted to do before going back to the city and talking to them about how they might assess flood risk in a manufactured home park. The other thing that we're working on bringing, we've been reviewing FEMA information on how they assess flood risk in a manufactured home. And so we wanted to bring the updated maps along with that information to the city to have that discussion. Because as you might imagine, it's a little bit trickier to compare apples to oranges when you're talking about a manufactured home that's elevated, comparing that to a more traditional home where we're talking about low entry elevations at grade. So there's different ways to look at what flood risk looks like. And some of it is about when do utilities get impacted in a manufactured home? And, how do you talk about emergency management in some of those areas? And does that reflect what kinds of interventions you would do? So Yeah, I guess I'll stop. Does that answer your question, Diane?
It does a bit. I know that the board members have had a lot of questions about the FEMA definitions. I'm not quite sure how to handle it, but maybe at some future meeting, coming
Yeah.
in, giving us a summary of what you've learned.
Yeah.
This was really an area where there was a big blank, and because that's one of our worst flood prone areas.
Right.
Or to the top of the district, as we're kind of moving down with flood control suggestions, it'd be helpful to have some
Yeah, we'll
general
definitely,
understanding.
that's definitely going to be coming back to you.
Mhm.
Probably after we meet with the City of Little Canada to get some more background, but you could also put the updated maps on the story map too,
Yeah.
as a part of the status update.
Yeah.
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 I
Certainly.
think that's kind of what I was looking for, different ways of doing it. But if we keep connecting these tools in the same way, then
Yeah.
we're going to be able to find things easier.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that you have context behind that information too. And so if maybe we wouldn't want to put it up there until we were able to have those discussions, but yeah, I think
Sounds
you'll
good.
definitely see that.
Yep.
I had a question on this shallow lake aeration study. I recall before we had some issues where we went into lakes and unfortunately they changed, right? There was choices made. I'm blanking on the name of the lake, but they became not great for studies. Are we getting some sort of agreement with the Bennett Lake to where we feel confident in the time frame that we can study?
Yeah, I mean, the tricky part with that is that the scale is so much bigger. So the water body you were referring to where we started out doing the pre-aeration study and then things changed was that Frog Pond, which is actually south on the southeastern edge of Bennett Lake. So it seems like Bennett Lake itself is going to be more amenable to the city. It's a bigger lake, so we're looking at how best to assess that. But it seems more promising than our experience with Frog Pond.
Yeah, because there was reference at least later on where it seems like we're still collecting data on that aeration piece, and with the Tishkill and the like, it seems that would be really nice to get some solid data on.
Mhm. Yep.
And Jarvis Mill Pond too, so that was another.
Oh, that's
one,
right. Yep, that's the other one
which
coming
is
up.
right here, right outside our- right down here.
And smaller. I mean, those are more focused. Right.
I know there's been some interest in the past in the managers tagging along on some of the beltline inspection, which when I did was in the winter, but it looks like there's some going on now. Coming up soon.
I know there's more to be done. I'm not sure that the conditions, what does it
Are
say? I guess
amenable.
I don't. Yeah, and we probably wouldn't take
Okay.
non-professional inspectors down during the season when there's
But that's
runoff.
what I wondered
Yeah.
about this season.
That's why this winter is nice, because it's
Okay.
a little safer.
How would you want to do that?
Yeah.
Tina,
Yeah.
having been on the board for like most of my life, I would have to say that tour that we dropped down into the Beltline and I think I with a colleague got to spray paint that we were here was perhaps the most fun tour and exciting and informative tour that I have experienced in my entire time here on the board. So,
I'll work
saying
with
if there's another opportunity for these newbies to do that, they might enjoy it too.
Yeah, I'll work with Bar and Dave to plan a time for that, probably next winter.
Yeah, and it could be on a really cold day like it was, so it feels nice and warm.
Warm
in
down there. Yeah,
Good.
yeah, sounds good.
How about you, Pam? Did you have anything else on the project and program status reports?
I do not, thank you.
Anything else, Val?
I just wanted to check in. I read the communications on the website redesign. It looks like things are moving. Do we have a sense on when the next round of testing or something might be available for us to look at?
It'll be in June, yeah. So I think that Lauren will be here at the June meeting to give you a update in person or virtually in person. And then the testing will happen after that. Yeah.
Sweet.
Because we hope to have it wrapped up, probably looking at the first week of July now, but
That's awesome. So yeah, let me know. She's welcome to reach out if she wants another tester.
I think she does, yeah.
Anything else, Val? Matt?
Nope.
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Manager comments in next month's meeting. Anybody have anything?
No, I jumped the gun on the CAC thing, but you already took care of it.
No, that's fine. Well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, let's adjourn.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone
Thank
online.
you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
You guys.
Have a good night.
Good night from Hibbing.
Have fun.
Enjoy.
Night.
Yeah. See ya.